Yeah, I moved my business 4 times, and each time I was moving on up, like the Jeffersons. And I said one day that I would be able to get my own place.
The magic here was through the struggle that they were going through that time period of life.
And here I am, 60 years later, still on the move.
The Black community had to struggle for everything that they had, be it owning a business, be it owning a home.
We've heard it all before. One of the most famous men in history said it. If you can't fly, run. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. But you must keep moving forward. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.
Oh yeah, Tyrone's was definitely the happening place because Tyrone was the center of all the barbers' world. If you were a barber back in that era, you wanted to go cut with Tyrone, it was a privilege. So he mentored myself and hundreds of other kids from East Biloxi.
And all the young people my age were going to Mr. Tyrone. I kept saying, Daddy, I want to go. I want to go. But I want you to get in and I want you to get out. If you went to Tyrone, you're going to be there all day long.
And I used to have the kids to sweep up for me. And I always had a little snacks. And they knew if they sweep up for me, they're going to get a snack.
No, it wasn't always so easy for entrepreneurs back of town like Mr. Tyrone Burton. But they kept the dream alive.
And here I am, I have lived the dream that I dreamed about.
You name the entity or business, we had it. And everything was within walking distance.
I mean, we're talking mostly about the restaurants that he ran at one time. But also, he and I started a construction company at one time. The only thing I knew was to paint. I knew how to paint. And he did too. But we would hire people that were carpenters, that could do the other jobs, and we would get those jobs. And, you know, we did pretty well at times.
I worked a lot with my grandfather, Mr. Booker, in his lawn care service. He was a hog farmer. We had to pick up the slop the hogs, come back home, bathe, get dressed, and go to school. In the evening, after school was out, come back home, change clothes, get on the back of the truck, go get dropped off at somebody's yard and cut yards.
Mr. Kemp was also a master mechanic, got his education at Perkinston in 1965. So when he got the education, he got the building, he opened the business, so you had a taxi stand. His sons worked on cars with the Gines family, and he also sold kerosene because most of the homes ran off kerosene back in the day.
My father, Charles Smith, was an entrepreneur on Main Street. He, along with several other entrepreneurs, opened nightclubs on Main Street. He built his nightclub brick by brick.
And there was a grocery store, there was a white grocery store next to the black Rum Boogie. So, I mean, it was, in that sense, it was a more, economically, a more integrated community.
We live together, you know, and our future's together. And business is business too. So, you know, it just made no sense to do those kinds of things that were, you know, the perception. I don't know where it is everywhere else in the world, but I have a little good feeling about Biloxi.
Now, there were 3 major employers of Main Street in those days: the seafood industry, education, and Keesler Air Force Base, which provided a major economic boon to Biloxi, and still does.
My dad built a little duplex himself in our backyard and had, at one time, 4 Keesler families living there.
But the airmen had to be back at a certain time. Now, to get back on base, they had to have transportation. That's where my grandfather came in at, Cornelius B. Kemp, Kemp Cab, the city's first ever African-American cab service.
The military was leaders among civil rights because they were integrated by direction of the President of the United States to defend our country, which they did. And so even during the 50s and the 60s, before we had complete integration, that was a shining example of America doing the right thing.
Yet, the Main Street spirit of yesterday still thrives today. The juke joints may be gone, but the music plays on in the hearts of those who once lived here and those who remain here.
So what we have in the works now, in collaboration with a few other groups, we're trying to open up a culinary school to train people from the area to be cooks.
The revitalization of East Biloxi is going to take a collective effort.
Most of my political career has been trying to recover that magical Biloxi that has been lost. And I'm not alone in that. There's a hope for that. There's a desire for that. Is it possible? Yes. Will it be exactly the same? No.
Back in the 50s, it just showed the generations of their children what could be. You can have this if you have that fortitude. You can have this if you have that discipline. You can have this and much, much more. Don't just rely on mom and dad. You know, we've worked hard and we've sent you off to college. Come home. Come home and make a contribution to your community.
The vision, the perseverance, and the hope for a newer and better East Biloxi Main Street will always be the promise for a 21st century back of town.
Nothing in life is easy. You have to earn and be willing to pursue your dreams, and all things are possible. Never let anyone tell you that you can't do what you want to do, because anything is possible, but you've got to believe.